Nobody in Pine Hollow, Maryland, remembered exactly when the old Whitmore house stopped feeling like a house and started feeling like a warning. Some said it was the weather. The place always looked wrong in the rain, as if the wood had soaked up decades of grief and was slowly rotting from sadness. Others said it was the way the upstairs windows reflected light long after sunset, like someone was still walking room to room with a candle. But the truth began thousands of miles away, over the black waters between Spain and the Atlantic, inside a plane no one believed had enough room for that much terror. The Whitmore family had been on vacation in northern Spain. Martin Whitmore, his wife Elena, their 12-year-old daughter Sophie, their 8-year-old son Caleb, and their black cat, Nero. Nero was not supposed to be on the trip. Martin had argued against it. Elena said the cat would be miserable alone for 2 weeks. Sophie cried until her father gave in. So Nero went, sealed in a travel carrier under Sophie's seat, yellow eyes glowing through the mesh whenever the cabin lights dimmed. People who met Nero always said the same thing. There was something human in the way that cat looked at you. Not intelligent in the ordinary sense. Not affectionate. Not even curious. Judging. Nero was sleek, midnight black, with fur so dark it swallowed light. He had one torn ear from a fight years ago and a habit of appearing silently in doorways, as if he had been standing there for a long time before anyone noticed. Sophie adored him. Caleb was afraid of him at night. Elena laughed that he was only a cat. Martin never laughed. On the last day in Spain, the family boarded a red-eye flight bound for America. The weather was ugly. Winds battered the runway. Rain slashed sideways across the windows. The kind of storm that makes pilots speak too calmly. Passengers settled in. Seatbelts clicked. The engine screamed. The aircraft rose into the dark. For the first hour, there was only turbulence. Then there was the smell. Burning plastic. It drifted through the cabin so faintly at first that people looked at each other, uncertain. A flight attendant moved quickly toward the rear. Another knelt beside a panicking businessman. Above the engine's hum, a sharp metallic shriek cut through the floor beneath everyone's feet. Nero began to scream inside his carrier. Not meowing. Screaming. The sound was so violent, so full of animal panic, that heads turned all across the cabin. Sophie reached down to calm him. Martin told her not to open the carrier. Elena gripped the armrest. Caleb buried his face in her coat. The lights flickered once. Twice. Then the plane dropped. People slammed against their belts. A baby wailed. Overhead bins burst open and luggage spilled into the aisle. Someone shouted a prayer in Spanish. Someone else vomited. The aircraft twisted hard left, and for a few final seconds the entire cabin became a screaming steel tomb falling through cloud and lightning. Elena grabbed Caleb. Martin reached for Sophie. The seat back in front of them split open. Oxygen masks swung uselessly. And somewhere beneath the roar of the dying aircraft, Nero stopped screaming. He went silent. Then came the impact. No one on the ground ever forgot it. Fishermen off the coast saw a streak of fire tear across the clouds before vanishing into the sea. Rescue teams searched through wreckage and oil and floating luggage for 3 days. Official reports spoke of catastrophic mechanical failure during severe weather. There were no survivors. That should have been the end. It was not. Because some things do not break apart when the body does. Some things only become hungrier. 3 weeks after the crash, the Whitmore house in Pine Hollow was sold. The family had no close relatives willing to keep it. The insurance company processed what it could. Lawyers signed papers. Strangers cleaned out closets, boxed up photographs, threw away children's drawings, and scrubbed the floors until the place smelled of bleach instead of memory. The new owners were the Harpers. David Harper, his wife Melissa, their 16-year-old daughter Rowan, and their little boy Ben, who was 6 and still believed every old house had secret places inside the walls. They moved in on an overcast Thursday in October. The neighbors helped unload boxes. Melissa laughed about the creaking stairs. David admired the fireplace. Rowan complained about the weak Wi-Fi. Ben wandered room to room, delighted by the attic hatch and the narrow upstairs hall. At sunset, while the movers carried in the last mattress, Ben stood in the front yard staring at the second-floor window. Melissa called his name twice before he answered. "What are you looking at?" He pointed. "The cat." There was nothing there. Only the pale reflection of evening and the empty glass. Melissa smiled uneasily. "No cat, honey." But Ben frowned, still staring. "It was black," he said. "Then white. Then black again." The next morning, Rowan said she wanted the bedroom across the hall. Melissa said no. David said old houses had mice. Ben announced over breakfast that he had met the children upstairs. The room went still. "What children?" Melissa asked. "The sad ones," Ben said, spoon halfway to his mouth. "The girl and the boy. They said this is still their house. The cat doesn't like us." David forced a laugh. "You had a dream, buddy." Ben shook his head. "No. They were wet." Melissa nearly dropped her coffee. Things worsened after that. Cold spots formed in corners where breath turned white. Family photos unpacked onto tables kept falling face first to the floor, but only the one showing Melissa and David. Ben began drawing the same image over and over, a house under a dark sky, for shadowy figures in the upstairs window, and a cat much larger than any real cat, crouched on the roof with eyes like moons. One rainy evening, Melissa found muddy footprints on the kitchen ceiling. Tiny bare footprints. Like a child had walked upside down overhead. They ended directly above the table. That same night, the television turned on by itself. Static hissed through the living room. David grabbed the remote, but the screen changed before he could mute it. For 1 second, only one, there was a burned, broken image of airplane seats and hanging masks. Then the screen went black. In the reflection, standing behind David, was a woman with long wet hair hanging over her face. He spun around. No one. Melissa heard him shout and came running. When she asked what happened, he told her the TV had glitched. He did not mention the woman. He did not mention that as he turned the TV off, a child's voice whispered from the speaker. "We came home." By the second week, nobody in the Harper family was sleeping. Ben cried every night because the cat sat on his chest and would not let him breathe. Melissa began hearing a woman humming in the laundry room. The tune never changed. It was always soft, broken, and impossibly sad. Once she followed the sound to the basement and found all the clean clothes she had folded scattered in the dirt, each tiny shirt and pair of socks soaking wet with salt water. Rowan's mirror started changing. At first it was simple. She'd glance up while brushing her hair and think she saw someone standing over her shoulder. A little girl. A boy missing half his face in shadow. A woman in a soaked dress. Then the mirror began lagging behind her. She would move, and her reflection would pause a second too long. Blink a second too late. Smile when she wasn't smiling. The worst came on a Sunday afternoon. Melissa had taken Ben grocery shopping. David was at work. Rowan was home alone. She heard the purring again. This time it came from under her bed. She backed toward the door, phone shaking in her hand. The purring grew louder, deeper, until it sounded almost like a motor grinding inside an empty chest. Then a black paw slid out from the shadows beneath the bed. It was too long. Far too long. The limb kept stretching, joint after joint bending wrong, until it resembled a human arm covered in black fur. Another followed. Then a head emerged. Not a cat's head. Not fully. A cat's skull, yes, but elongated, melted, the mouth opening wider than flesh should allow. Wet teeth gleamed in rows. Its eyes were not yellow now. They were blue. Human blue. Sophie's blue, though Rowan could not have known that. The creature pulled itself halfway out and stared at her. Its fur rippled. Black turned grey. Grey turned white. White flushed red like blood spreading through water. Then black again. And in a voice like many whispers packed into one throat, it said, "Get out of my room." Rowan ran screaming from the house barefoot into the rain. Neighbors found her in the street sobbing that there was a cat with a girl's eyes under her bed. After that, David agreed to bring in help. The first was a priest. Father Haynes came with holy water, a crucifix, and the confidence of a man who had spent too many years being told every shadow was the devil. He blessed the doors. Prayed in Latin. Walked from room to room with steady hands. Everything stayed quiet until he reached the top of the stairs. The manager unlocked the door to find all four family members standing outside in the parking lot in their pajamas, pale and shaking. None of them remembered getting out of bed. None of them remembered walking outside. But each one insisted they had heard the same thing moments before waking in the cold. Scratching at the motel door. And a child's voice whispering from the hallway. "Come back. This is our house." No matter where the Harpers went, the haunting followed. Water dripped from ceilings where there were no pipes. Cat hair appeared in their food. Ben woke with claw marks on his back. Melissa found a dead bird placed neatly on the dashboard of her car, though the windows had been closed all night. They returned to the house because at least there the terror made sense. By then the Whitmores no longer seemed interested in simply scaring them away. They wanted punishment. Maybe because the Harpers slept in their beds. Ate in their kitchen. Painted over Sophie's pale yellow bedroom walls. Tore down the swing in the backyard because it squeaked. Maybe because ghosts do not understand paperwork or legal sales or probate. Maybe because to the dead, possession still belongs to memory. Or maybe it was Nero. Maybe the cat had brought something else back with them from the sea. The final week began with the smell of salt water throughout the house. Not rotten. Not fishy. Clean and cold and ocean deep. It filled every room. The carpet stayed damp. The walls sweated. At night, faint puddles formed beneath the beds. David finally found the old newspaper clippings while searching the attic. The plane crash. The obituary. A photograph of the Whitmore family smiling on a porch identical to his own. Martin. Elena. Sophie. Caleb. And there, perched in Sophie's arms, the black cat. He was black, then silver, then hairless and pink, then made of writhing shadows, then a mass of bones in the shape of a cat, then whole again. His eyes kept changing too: yellow, blue, white, empty sockets, human eyes, child eyes, dead eyes. He looked at the Harpers with ancient hatred. Sophie spoke first. "You took my room." Her voice crackled like a damaged speaker. Melissa began crying. "We didn't know. We're sorry. We're so sorry." Caleb tilted his head. Water poured from one ear. "Mommy says you have to leave." Martin lifted one broken arm and pointed toward the front door. David tried to move, but the beam of the flashlight died in his hand. Total darkness swallowed them. Then the cat moved. Anyone who has ever seen a real cat cross a room knows how silent they can be. This was different. Nero did not run. He unfolded. One instant he was on the landing. The next, he was in the living room, towering near the ceiling, body stretching longer and longer until his back brushed the chandelier. His mouth split open from jaw to throat. Inside was not a tongue but a twisting darkness filled with distant cries. He slammed one paw against the wall, and the plaster burst like paper. Ben screamed. The storm outside answered with thunder so violent the whole house flashed white. In that light, the Harpers saw the ghosts of the Whitmore family no longer standing at the stairs, but all around them. Elena in the kitchen doorway. Martin by the fireplace. Caleb crouched under the table, peering out with drowned eyes. Sophie at the end of the hall. And everywhere at once, the cat. On the ceiling. In the mirror. Under the couch. In the dark between stair rails. 100 versions of Nero, each a different shape, each watching. The walls began to fill with scratches. Not random marks. Words. Hours go, leave, drown, burn, die. He turned and shouted the only thing he could think of. "This is still your house." The humming stopped. All the ghosts froze. David's voice shook, but he kept going. "We'll leave it. Everything. We'll leave it to you. We don't want it. We don't want any of it." For a moment, no one moved. Rain hammered the roof. Water dripped from Elena's fingertips to the floor. Sophie stared at Rowan with dead blue eyes. Then little Ben, trembling in Melissa's arms, whispered into the silence. "Can the cat stop looking at me?" Nero's head slowly turned toward the boy. And smiled. The lights came back on. Just for a second. The living room flashed bright and empty. No ghosts. No cat. No scratches on the wall. No water. Then the bulbs exploded all at once. The front door flew open. The Harpers ran. They left behind clothes, money, photographs, everything. They drove through the storm without headlights for the first mile because their hands would not stop shaking enough to find the switch. They never went back. The house remained vacant for 6 months. When the bank finally sent men to inspect it, they found the interior gutted by damp and mold despite no plumbing leaks. Every upstairs window had been scratched from the inside. In the smallest bedroom, they found hundreds of black cat hairs piled neatly in the center of the floor, though the room had been sealed. The house was listed, then delisted. Buyers backed out. Contractors refused to stay after dark. One claimed he saw a little girl in the backyard petting a cat that kept changing colors like oil on water. Another swore he heard an airplane overhead every night at exactly 3:12 a.m., though no flight path crossed Pine Hollow. Eventually the town learned to leave the Whitmore house alone. Children dared each other to touch the porch. Teenagers parked across the street and watched the upstairs windows. Nero let us in. So if you ever pass through Pine Hollow on a rainy night, and you see an old house standing alone with one upstairs light glowing, do not stop. Do not go to the window. Do not knock, no matter how softly you hear children crying inside. And if you glimpse a black cat on the porch, staring at you with yellow eyes that suddenly turn blue, keep driving. Because some ghosts wander. Some ghosts rage. But the worst ones are the ones that come home and find strangers living where they died. And if the cat follows you with its eyes, if its body ripples and changes shape in the dark, if you hear the soft scrape of claws on your roof later that night, understand this. The Whitmores are not trapped in that house. They are guarding it. And Nero. Nero is hunting for the next family to bring inside.